Hey everyone, I wanted to talk to you guys about spackles or putties. You might be asking yourself, what's a spackle? A spackle is an easier to apply putty that is a little bit thinner than a traditional wood putty, and it's intended to be sanded after you use it. All spackles need to be primed after you apply them and sand them if you want a perfect finish. Traditional painter's putties do not. Traditional painter's putty, you ball up in your hand and you put on the piece and then you cut it off with a putty knife, and then you can just touch it with your hand, and it's very fast, very efficient, and it's great for interior trim work when the finish doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, especially if you're going to be coming over it with a brush and you can have brush strokes. And that'll kind of hide those putty marks for when you're doing that with traditional painter's putty. But spackle is something that takes a little bit more work, a little bit more time, but in my opinion it'll give you the absolute best finish possible if you want a glass, automotive-like finish on your woodwork. So in front of me I have 4 of the best brands in my opinion of spackle or putty. Now these 3 right here are considered spackles, and this one is technically considered a putty, but it acts like a spackle, kind of like a hybrid. So Timbermate is great for colored putties. They have a lot more options than these other companies. These are some of the colors of wood putties that I have from Timbermate, and they work great. They are fantastic when you have a clear lacquered finish for real wood. It's fantastic. But these other ones do not have that. Just as a go-to, if you're using clear lacquer and you want to actually see the wood, or even if you're going to be staining it, Timbermate's the way to go. You don't need to look anywhere else. It's the best actual wood putty. So with that out of the way, now we're going to be talking about for painted products. And now these are the 3 products that we might use for a painted product. And each of these have different properties of why you would want to use it. There are 5 things that I would say is important when it comes to a putty or a spackle. Number 1 is its spreadability. How easy it is to apply onto the product and move on. You don't want to be fighting with the product to get it to stick to the product and to apply properly. When you're dealing with a time is money situation, kind of like I am usually with business, then that's important. You need it to go on quick, and you want to go the first time. The second thing that a spackle needs is it needs to have good adhesion. Once you put it onto that product, you want it to stay onto that product. If it gets impacted, if it gets scuffed up and moved around, you don't want it to be popping off the wood. You want it to stay where you put it to have a good quality product. The third thing you're looking for is a fast enough dry time. You don't want it to dry immediately because you want to be able to come back, wipe it off, and finish the line, but you want it to dry relatively fast, hopefully within 5-10 minutes. The fourth thing that's important with the spackle is how much it shrinks. So for example, a drywall mudding compound, which actually fills up much of your walls that you see in your interior home, those things are held together with a drywall mudding compound. If you ever use a drywall mudding compound, it spreads super easy like butter. It's a dream to work with. But the problem is it shrinks a lot and it dries very slow. That's why it takes multiple days to do the drywall mud in a home. So let me also say, for those 2 reasons, the dry time and also the shrinkage, I would not recommend a drywall mudding compound for fine woodwork. It's just not engineered for that. I also have concerns with the adhesion of drywall mudding compound as well. And the 5th thing that a spackle needs is it needs to have good paintability. Now some spackles that you'll see, they're very grainy. And when you look at it up close, it almost looks like there's a bunch of little sand particles in it. And those are actually very difficult to sand out and difficult to get a high quality finish after you're using it. So you want to stick with something that sands very smoothly and it doesn't have a lot of those little crystals in it that really just makes it a very hard job to get a perfect paint. In my experience, the DAP line of spackles are very grainy. And then after you prime it or top coat it, sometimes you can still see the sanding marks. You can still see some little sand grains in there from the spackle. These products don't do that. So I would stay away from low quality spackles. It might seem by first glance that they're all the same, but they're not. Anybody can do a crappy paint job, but if you're going to do a good paint job, it takes a lot of skill and it takes the right products. So now we're going to take a look at the actual use of some of these products and compare them to the other products. Okay, so here we have this Crawford spackling paste here. I'm going to be using some of this. I'm going to see how it spreads. The application of this stuff is probably the smoothest out of any putty I've ever used. Super fast, but its adhesion isn't as strong, and so even in those little corners, you can see as you're spreading it, likes to lift up a little bit. It's kind of difficult sometimes to get it to seat perfectly flush. But it just spreads like it's not even there. It's just incredible. Now Crawford's takes a while to dry, so I wouldn't be able to do that in one pass anyways. That's going to probably take 3 hours or so to dry, and then I'll have to come back and do it again. It'll take a little less time to dry next time. Okay, now we have the 3M Patch Plus Primer, and this stuff is like weird. It does not feel like a putty. It feels like moon paste. Just very strange. So when I'm applying this stuff, it does not spread easy, and it just comes apart very strangely, and you really got to push it in there like very hard, or else it won't adhere, and it'll just come right off. But man, once you get it in there, it is in there. Now you see it came out that hole. I already put in that hole. Came out. But good news about this, it's gonna dry in about an hour. It's gonna be rock hard, and well, not rock hard, but hardwood hard, and it's not gonna shrink at all. So for big holes like this, it's a fantastic product, but just so weird to work with because of how strange the consistency is. But it doesn't pull out of those holes. Very interesting product, but a good product. And now for my favorite, the MH Ready Patch. Just a great smooth consistency with this stuff. It's a little bit thicker than the Crawfords, but spreads very smoothly as well. It doesn't want to pull out of those holes like the Crawfords did, and it spreads super smooth. And a little bit of pulling out of a hole there. One thing I love about the MH is after you spread it, its dry time is just good enough that you can spread it, wipe it, and then reapply it. And when you're doing big putty jobs, this is actually great. You can keep doing this until it's basically nothing on your putty knife. You spread, wipe it off, and then now I have some more on my putty knife, and I can keep using that for other stuff. Most of the time, Crawfords especially, you can't do that. After you wipe it off, you can maybe do it one time and then it's waste. But with this MH, you can keep doing it over and over again until there's basically nothing on your knife. And it's just really good for that. Has perfect dry time. Okay, now we're on to the Timbermate. And let me say, as a disclaimer, this stuff smells horrible. I don't know what it is, but man, when you open this can, it just does not smell good, and you can't get the smell out of your shop for like an hour or two. It's horrible. That alone makes me not want to use this stuff unless I have to. It's an okay consistency. I mean,
Not as good as Crawford's or Ready Patch, but it's better than the. But it's better than the 3M stuff. Okay. All right, now I gotta say you gotta push a little hard. I don't like how hard you gotta push. You gotta even push even harder on this stuff than you do the 3M moon paste, the moon putty. So this is you gotta push really hard on Timbermate. Now one good thing about Timbermate is it is very hard. It takes a stain very well, and it's not grainy. Let's see if we can see the reflection on that. You can almost see a reflection coming off of it because of how smooth it is. So it works great after you get the stuff applied, but it's really just a pain to get it applied perfectly in the first place. But once you get it applied, it's great. You just got to put so much work into it. Not a fun experience with a combination of the smell and how like literally my arm is sore already from applying this stuff. So I am not happy. The time it would take me to apply this onto a big job like this, especially with a lot of holes, it's a lot. And also, this does shrink a little bit. It says it doesn't shrink on the can, but it does shrink a little bit. And those are not ready for sanding. That'll take another coat. Good news about the Timbermate, it is the fastest drying of all my putties. So this is a lot of putty on some big holes, but within 10 minutes or so, I can recoat this. So that is a benefit of the Timbermate, but for the most part, I'm never filling holes that big that I need to get done immediately. I'll use this stuff if I have to, but man, I hate even opening up the can, just with the smell of it, especially when the other ones, Crawford's and MH, I actually enjoy the smell of those things. Except for this is a horrible experience.
Well, there you have it. This is a product that I would not recommend for you unless you were just a huge Timbermate fan and you love the way that their other products use and you use them a lot. Now that we got rid of the Timbermate, now we can talk about these three spackles and why I use which one when. And I'll make it super simple for you. Use this on hardwoods, use this on softwoods, and use this when you can't have any shrinkage, like a large hole fill. MH is my go-to spackle, primarily because I'm working in hardwoods and I do not have very large gaps to fill. If you guys have ever had a piece of hardwood jointed up next to a piece of softwood, or even had a piece of end grain hardwood up against maybe, let's say, a piece of face grain or edge grain hardwood, you'll notice that when you sand it, it leaves a ridge where at the end grain. The end grain is harder, and so it's difficult for your sandpaper to cut through that end grain, but then it cuts through the face grain super fast, and it actually leaves an uneven surface. You can actually feel a ridge going up into the harder surfaces. So that's why it's important to marry up your spackle to the hardness of your work. Now, MH putty is about the hardness of hardwood. Now, if I were to use MH spackle on a softwood, that would mean that the softwood around the MH spackle would sand faster than the spackle itself, and you're never going to get it perfectly smooth. So if you're going to be working with softwoods and you want a fantastic finish, Crawford's is the way to go because it matches the hardness of that softwood, and MH matches the hardness of that hardwood. And there's been a couple of times, let's say on a cabinet door, when I drilled the 35 millimeter holes for the Euro hinges, I did them in the wrong way. I did them on the wrong side or something like that. This stuff is fantastic. You can then just paste that entire hole and it will not shrink at all. Zero shrinkage and very hard. But how difficult it is to apply this stuff just makes it super annoying, and it probably triples the time that it takes me to spackle something. That being said, I am amazed that this stuff can be as lightweight as it is and be as hard as it is. Doesn't make sense to me, but it's a really fantastic product aside from the easeability of spread. Other than that, it's an amazing product. Well, thanks for stopping by, guys. I hope this video helped educate you guys to choose the right spackle or putty for your job depending on the applications of it. And if you guys don't mind, I'd ask you to please subscribe and hit the like button and leave a comment. I always read them and I like to have good conversations with the people that are following these videos. And that just lets me know that I'm doing a good job and you guys are interested in what I'm saying. And also if you have any requests on any videos from a professional woodworker, go ahead and leave them on in and I'd be happy to address it and make a video about it in the future.